2 cycles ago, Miami was heavily involved in the recruitment of five-star defensive tackle David Stone. Oklahoma ultimately won that recruiting battle coming out of high school, but now Stone has hit the transfer portal, and the Hurricanes need to go get him.
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And some of you thought this was going to be a boring spring transfer portal. It just picked up, man. Shout out to the everydayers, and thank you so much, even on a Saturday, for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On this loaded episode, we'll talk about how Carson Beck is handling the pressure of replacing Cam Ward at Miami. We'll talk about all things transfer portal with the Hurricanes, visits getting lined up, offers being handed out, and of course, the big topic today being a player who just hit the transfer portal last night, player I believe Miami is trending for, and that is Oklahoma Sooners defensive tackle David Stone. He shocked the college football world. Now, I know some of you had suspicions that this might be coming, but I was in a spot where when it came to David Stone, I had to see it to believe it. I had some folks, including one of our awesome listeners, Victor, he's on every social media platform. He doesn't sleep. He just checks social media for all the players out there. And he was sending me like some cryptic stuff that Stone had been posting in recent days. And I was just, where I was at was, knowing how valuable of a player and he is now and how valuable of a recruit he was for OU. I just had a hard time really believing David Stone was going to hit the portal until we all saw it happen on Friday night. Former five-star defensive tackle in the class of 2024. In fact, David Stone, they call him a five-star plus because he was a five-star rated player on every single recruiting service, at least all the ones that are the major ones, On3, 24/7 Sports, Rivals, ESPN, a five-star sweep on all of those recruiting services. 6'3", 300-plus pounds, elite body type, very natural pass rusher from the interior, all the makeups of a player who was obviously a high-level guy coming out of high school. And yeah, with David Stone hitting the portal last night, the early buzz here is pointing to the Miami Hurricanes being the favorite. We'll give you all the reasons why. The early buzz, of course. Now, we'll see how the dust settles because David Stone, he's going to receive calls from literally dozens, if not hundreds of teams around the country. But things that give Miami a potential edge here, guys. The Hurricanes literally finished second in David Stone's recruitment. In fact, on the day that he put the Oklahoma hat on, and he had that Miami hat on the table and nearly grabbed it, even family members and friends of Stone seemingly thought that day that he was going to choose the Miami Hurricanes. It was that close. Now, Stone, he played at IMG Academy, which is in Bradenton, Florida, but it's a boarding school. He's from Oklahoma City. He's an OKC native, and Norman is like 35, 40 minutes away. He's an OKC native who grew up a Sooners fan. So when he made that decision out of high school, he went with his heart. But we've learned during the transfer portal era and in recruiting in general, guys, when you come in second for a player, it's not over. That can give you the edge down the road, a year, 2, 3 years down the road. If that player decides to transfer and you already built those relationships with that player in recruiting, that can give you the edge to land that guy later on. In fact, we sometimes see it in the transfer portal. Another example of this is CJ Daniels, former LSU and Liberty receiver who's now a Miami Hurricane. So when Daniels left Liberty a year ago, Miami came in second to LSU for CJ. Then after a year in Baton Rouge, Daniels decides to hit the portal again. Miami had built the relationships the prior year. Miami ends up landing the player for his final season. So that can happen in the transfer portal. It can certainly happen for players that you heavily recruited. Miami came in a very close second for Stone, and I believe that relationship is going to pay dividends here down the road. Now, Stone, this past season, we'll talk about his impact as a true freshman at Oklahoma because he didn't have a massive impact last year. But I'm telling you, there's nothing wrong with that, okay? So he appeared in all 13 games, played just 94 total snaps. As a true freshman in Norman, he had 6 tackles, a sack, 2 tackles for loss, playing as a reserve. So, no, he didn't have a massive immediate impact last year. But there are a ton of parallels here that you can draw between David Stone at Oklahoma and Justin Scott at Miami. There are obvious and less obvious parallels. Obvious are they were both 5 stars in the same recruiting class. Miami tried to land them both. Miami landed Justin Scott. They slightly missed on David Stone. But much like David Stone last year, Scott also played a limited role as a true freshman at Miami, but he seems ready to break out in his second year. Scott had an excellent spring, and he's really matured, and you can understand why he was a 5-star guy coming out of high school. I think the same can be said for Stone. I think Stone also had a really good spring in Oklahoma, which made his exit from there even more surprising, and he could also be ready to break out in his second year. I think that's a big parallel as well. In fact, 6 days before David Stone hit the portal, I don't think Brent Venables, the head coach at Oklahoma, expected that to happen because he had just said of Stone, he called him their most improved defensive tackle in the spring. So you can imagine the possibilities, folks. And again, coming out of high school, David Stone and Justin Scott were literally the top 2 defensive tackles in the class of 2024. Miami landed one, they missed on the other. But now they have an opportunity to get both of them on that same defensive line. In fact, Miami could, if they're able to land David Stone. I have heard Oregon, who's like the bane of our existence now, they may also be trying to get in the mix here for Stone. But I do think Miami, again, it's early, should be perceived as the leaders right now. But can you imagine if Miami can land Stoney, they could potentially have a 5-star lineup of defensive linemen if you get Marquise Lightfoot, 5-star out of high school, Justin Scott, David Stone, Hayden Lowe, another 5-star. You get them on the field at once. I mean, Jason Taylor, and now of course Damian Lewis, who's the other defensive line coach. We already know JT has been rocking it on the recruiting trail for the last couple of years. I mean, Miami could be in really great shape, and of course, the need for a guy like a David Stone. We've talked about this. It's why Miami is going after defensive tackles in the portal. You have a very clear top 3. Justin Scott, Ahmad Moten, transfer David Blay. That seems to be, your top 3, but you want to have 4, 5 guys you feel really confident being the top of your rotation at defensive tackle if you want to compete for things like ACC championships, college football playoff berths. So Miami really wants to fill out their interior defensive line rotation. Okay. Now, I was reading an article on On3 Sports, kind of giving the other side of David Stone and, what he kind of his outlook. This was before he decided to leave Oklahoma. They say as he got ready for his sophomore season, Stone said one of his main focuses was balancing life on and off the football field. By doing so, he'd be able to separate the two and lock in once he put his helmet and pads on. He said, quote, "I feel like myself." This is something Stone said after practice on April 2nd. "I feel like myself. I had a big issue with being able to let my life outside of football affect my football," he said. "I dominated a lot of the team settings and stuff like that, but sometimes outside of that, I could let my body language get bad because of stuff I had going on outside of football, whether it be grades or something. As a player, I had to learn how to compartmentalize those things, separate the two, and handle the pressure of outside life with football." And he continued, "I feel like this year I made the jump as a player, being able to dominate this space, whether it's in life or football. Like with my grades, I finished with SEC honor roll or whatever that was. I got that. That was a big accomplishment for me off the field. On the field, I've been killing it this spring," he said. "Winter workouts was a fun time for me. I'm up like 15, 20 pounds." And on that, Stone, I think last season was listed at around 295, 6'3", 295. I think he's up closer to the 313 range now is my understanding. He says, "I'm moving better than ever." So those things, making those small improvements all over has been a big part of my game so far. So yeah, I think David Stone is going to be probably already is, a massive transfer portal target from Miami. And again, folks, it would be poetic because we all know how close the Hurricanes were to him putting that Miami hat on, instead putting on the Sooners hat. You would love to see the relationships and all the work Miami put into recruiting him out of high school. You would love to see that pay off in the long run. And, I know Stone thinks very highly of Jason Taylor. I would imagine he's going to have an opportunity to get to know Damian Lewis, Miami's new interior defensive line coach. And let's see what the Hurricanes are able to do. But this one, to me, this is like the no-brainer of all no-brainers, right? Like certain times you see players hit the portal, like a Trevor Pena at receiver, and like Miami fans will debate, do we need this guy? Do we want this guy? Because we have Ray, we have Malachi Toney. In the case of David Stone, there is no debate. Like, I don't see why anyone would not want this player here in Coral Gables. Mario Cristobal, D. Lou, JT, you need to go out and get this guy. We'll talk about more transfer portal targets for Miami when we come back. You want to keep it locked right here, my friends. We're only getting started on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. Oh, we're so excited to have Amazon Fire TV as a member of the family now. Did you know your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe or sign in to Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to play. Dive into hundreds of premium titles from EA Sports College Football 25 to Call of Duty Black Ops 6 and Avowed as easily as you stream your favorite shows. It's gaming made simple, and it's all on your Fire TV. Guys, with Wi-Fi 6, 6E, and auto low latency mode advanced technology, Fire TV Stick 4K delivers smoother, more responsive gameplay with lightning fast speeds that you need to stay competitive. And of course, with 4K streaming, you can watch more than 1.5 million movies and TV episodes from your favorite subscribed services like Netflix, Prime Video, Disney Plus, Max, and so much more. Guys, head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K, Fire TV Stick 4K Max, and Fire TV Cube. Let's get into this action, guys, with Fire TV. Thank you for making this Saturday episode of Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Okay, other targets. This was quite the saga over the past week. So, we had been tracking Florida Gators safety Gregory Smith III, who had reportedly early last week going to put his name into the transfer portal. And, we talked about it earlier in the week, and then a lot of these Florida Gator accounts started trolling Donno like, look, he decided to stay at Florida. He ain't leaving. Because, there were reports that Smith had, backed out on his decision to leave. He was going to stay at Florida. The Gator accounts were dragging me for 24, 36 hours. And then at the end of it, Greg Smith, after all, decided to file his paperwork, enter the transfer portal, and he will be leaving Florida. Young player, elite body type, 6'3", 220-pound safety, 4 years of eligibility left, former 4-star recruit coming out of high school. And, with Smith, again, I know it was touch and go there. Is he in the portal? Is he not in the portal? He is in the portal now. And, you would perceive Miami as being a favorite there. His relationship with Will Harris, primary recruiter coming out of high school, very similar situation to that of Jalen Seatbelt Waters, who was high school, verbally committed to Florida, primarily because of Will Harris. Harris comes to Miami. He flips to Miami. We could end up having a similar situation here with Gregory Smith III. And again, like you got to be careful with these Gators news outlets. Now, the one that I trust, and in fact, the guy who gave me the most valuable information on Gregory Smith before we even knew he was going to enter the portal the first time, my guy Brandon Olson from Locked On Gators. That's the guy that I trust. He crushes it. Make sure you check out Locked On Gators if you're, interested in that sort of content. The rest of these Gator folks, shaky reporting at best. You can't always trust your sources out there, my friends. So yeah, we've got Gregory Smith in the portal. Seems like he's going to be a Miami target. Miami is also, they're going to be hosting another transfer portal safety and another promising young guy, 4 years of eligibility left. Noah King, former 4-star recruit at Kansas State. He's leaving Kansas State, 6'2", 200 pounds. So you notice like there are certain other positions, like defensive tackle David Stone is an exception, 3 years of eligibility left, but there are certain other spots where Miami's looking at guys with like a year eligibility left, like a Trevor Pena, like a Braxton Feely. But I think in the case of the defensive backfield, Miami's looking at a lot of young players who are still, requiring development. And I think it has a lot to do with Will Harris and Zach Etheridge, Miami's defensive backs coaches, really wanting to rebuild the DB room in their image. So they're going after some younger guys. And so, yeah, Kansas State safety Noah King is going to be visiting this week. So is Boise State defensive tackle Braxton Feely. That's someone with 1 year of eligibility left. He's going to be visiting this coming week. I think I'd said yesterday I had heard a Tuesday visit for him. I think it's looking like a Thursday, but either way, Braxton Feely is coming. He has visited Cal already, but I think Miami is still expecting to host him. So, hopefully, Cal didn't win him over in the room, right? And I think he's still planning to visit Miami. So hopefully that goes well. Miami, I haven't seen anything about a visit yet, but Miami has offered San Jose State wide receiver Trayshawn Hurry, 6'2", 195-pound outside receiver. He averaged 17.2 yards per catch last year. Different level of football, San Jose State, but, down the field playmaker, had 482 receiving yards, 2 touchdowns last year. Now he's going to be visiting Louisville this weekend, so Miami is going to have to sweat out that Louisville visit. We'll see if Hurry gets out of there without committing. We'll see if he makes it down to the 305. I haven't seen anything about a visit being scheduled yet, but that is a player that Miami has offered. Okay. And of course, we're also going to continue to monitor the situation of Trevor Pena, the receiver out of Syracuse, who's hit the portal. And, people are throwing around those alleged dollar amounts that he's asking for. I don't think he's really asking for or going to get $2 million to play slot receiver for 1 year. I think that's, funny money or funny reporting. And Trevor Pena, has not apparently locked in a Miami visit, at least not yet. But Pena is visiting Penn State. Okay, so we'll have to wait that one out or sweat that one out to see if he makes it down to Miami. But as soon as he hit the portal a few days ago, Miami was being immediately considered a possible front runner along with Texas Tech. But then Penn State got the visit in. Now, honestly, if Trevor Pena, as his, former head coach kind of accused him of, if he's really bag chasing, if he ends up at Penn State, that doesn't seem like a bag chasing move. Like, I'm sure Penn State has money, but they don't spend like that. Like their NIL philosophy is like very old school. They don't spend, or as they would say, overspend on guys. Like that they don't do NIL like that, right? So, if he is out there, allegedly looking for the bag, like his former head coach Fran Brown basically said he was, then I don't think he's going to end up at Penn State. And I'm also not advocating that Miami or whoever else, pays him $2 million. It probably doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And he had a really good year last year. 984 receiving yards, led his team with 9 touchdowns, led his team in receptions last year. Like Trevor Pena showed out last year. I don't necessarily think any slot receiver, though, is worth $2 million for 1 year. But guess what? It's not my money. And it's not Mario Cristobal's money either. And it's not Fran Brown's money at Syracuse, but he tends to take that stuff very personally. So Trevor Pena is another one to watch. I hadn't, with all the stuff we've had going on this past week, I never commented on and it wasn't even Carson Beck interviewed, but Mario Cristobal and Shannon Dawson, Miami's OC, discussing Carson Beck and his goals and the pressure that's on his shoulders replacing Cam Ward was a really good article by Brandon Marcello on CBS Sports. And there's a quote that is attributed to Carson Beck where he trolled Miami a little bit. And you know what? I kind of liked it. You want to keep it locked right here. We're not done yet on this brand new Locked On Canes. We're certainly not done yet with FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are here, and our Miami Heat are in it. Play in, no problem. You beat Chicago on the road. You beat Atlanta on the road in overtime. The Miami Heat are in the playoffs, and so we are all in with FanDuel. FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and you place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. I love how FanDuel makes betting so easy, whether it's picking my favorite team or diving into player props. From three-pointers to steals to assists, FanDuel has so many ways to bet your favorite player props. Plus, after the game tips off, you can even combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win big. Do not miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today. Thank you for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. For your next listen, make sure you check out Locked On ACC. Kenton Gibbs from Locked On Wolfpack and I host that show. We take you around the conference, transfer portal stuff, realignment, rumors, lawsuits, which we settled those, thankfully. We take you through all of that on Locked On ACC, available free wherever you get your podcasts and available free on YouTube. So I love this. So, Brandon Marcello of CBS Sports, spent a little time with Mario Cristobal, Shannon Dawson, some other Miami coaches late last week. This was from those conversations, guys, is where he was able to report. We talked about this at the end of the week that, Carson Beck was about to be cleared to throw. So that clearance has happened. Like Carson Beck is now in day 6 of being allowed to throw the football. He was originally cleared on Monday. So Beck is doing player-led workouts now. Miami is allowed up to 16 player-led practices before training camp begins at the end of the summer. So Beck is back to, at or, close to full strength now. I'm sure he's still, working through some things after recovering from the elbow, but he's cleared to throw, which is absolutely huge. And it's notable, like, I guess Carson did not actually comment himself on this story, but there was a lot of content that came out from Cristobal and also Coach Dawson, who's his Beck's quarterbacks coach and offensive coordinator. So in terms of convincing Beck to leave Athens, well, he'd already decided to leave Athens, but to convince him to come to Miami, the pitch, Cristobal said, according to Marcello, was simple. Replace future number 1 NFL draft pick Cam Ward in a proven offensive system and win a championship with a ready-made roster. Beck then researched the Hurricanes, focusing on the players' morale and atmosphere in the locker room. And yeah, I feel confident Miami had a really good locker room last year. Hopefully, and I expect they will again this year. But what Beck researched, right, talking to players within the program, Miami had a really good locker room last year. And obviously, Cam Ward was the leader of that locker room. There are certain other leaders, but, Beck, of course, has to at least partially fill that void here. So after all, Miami had just wrapped up a 10-3 season. They write, falling 1 win short of the ACC championship game and likely a spot in the college football playoff after a devastatingly bad showing by the defense throughout the season. Ward shattered records, but so did the defense. Here's what Shannon Dawson said. That bleep doesn't bother him, he said. Even though filling Cam's shoes around here seems big, to him, it's like, dude, stop. I followed a guy that won 2 national championships, and then we won the SEC. This ain't nothing for me, Beck told Dawson. Y'all got beat in the Pop-Tarts Bowl. You know what? I don't mind it. I don't mind it. Pop-Tarts Bowl is not where any of us wanted to be last year, and I think that's a great quote from Beck. And he's right. He's right. Like, he's following Stetson Bennett at Georgia. And he's at Georgia, where the standard is if you don't win a championship, it's an unsuccessful season. That's the standard there. That's what Kirby Smart has turned that program into. You think about all the pressure that he had at Georgia. You think the pressure now at Miami is going to be too much for Carson Beck? I thought that was a great quote. And listen, it's one of those things where I don't mind him trolling us from within. you're part of the family now. You know, you want to bring up the Pop-Tarts Bowl because you want to do better this year. I'm cool with that, Carson. I like that. I like that attitude. And, Dawson liked it as well. He says, I like that mentality, is what Shannon Dawson said. So Marcelo continued saying, Beck is a polarizing figure in college football because of his well-earned notoriety on the field, as well as his celebrity status in social media circles. Rumors continue circulating about his relationship with Hannah Cavender, who we think they're broken up, by the way, who recently deleted every video Beck appeared in alongside her popular Instagram and TikTok pages. In February, the couple garnered headlines with their 3 luxury vehicles stolen, drawing more eyes to their relationship. Beck has remained silent and was not made available to CBS Sports for this story. Dawson said, my perception outside was probably the same as a lot of people. I'm not a big social media guy, but I was like, hey, let's get to know who this kid really is. And the more I got to know him, the more I found out he doesn't really like that bleep either. He hasn't been on social media one time. He's a very private person, and you've got to get through some barriers to get to know the real him. There are no distractions now. In a lot of ways, he's a lot more relaxed, Austin said. I think that did kind of bother him at times. I felt like that he felt like he had to do social media because when you're with somebody, it is what it is, but it wasn't really who he is. Let's focus on ball. So I thought that was cool. Shannon Dawson really opening up on Carson Beck. And yeah, Dawson had said it to us in a media scrum a couple weeks back that, once Beck was comfortable here, the personality really started to come out, right? So he seems comfortable now with his teammates, seems comfortable in the program. And yeah, for the past, 5-6 days that he's been cleared to throw, I'm sure that's bringing the comfort to even another level. All right, my friends, we'll be monitoring David Stone for the next several days. Former 5-star recruit that Miami came in second for out of high school, leaving the Oklahoma Sooners in the portal. I believe Miami needs to go out and get this guy. Thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. Guys, make sure you're checking out Locked On NFL Draft. Damian Parson, Keith Sanchez are doing an incredible job as your favorite collegiate players get ready for the next level, like our guy Cam Ward. Get the latest draft rankings, rumors, and news every day. Find Locked On NFL Draft on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And guys, we will talk to you again next time on another episode of Locked On Canes. We are part of this awesome Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.